Welcome to Leads and Leverage, Real Estate Team Leader Lounge, where success in real estate meets passion-driven leadership. I'm your host, Tyler Gibson. I'm an entrepreneur, real estate team leader, and investor, and I'm thrilled to have you join us in the ultimate hub for real estate excellence. In this exclusive lounge, we're diving deep into strategies, tactics, and stories that fuel the success of real estate teams. Whether you're a seasoned pro looking to take your leadership skills to new heights or an aspiring entrepreneur ready to build your own powerhouse team, this podcast is your go-to resource for insider insights and actionable advice. Get ready to hear from top experts, industry pioneers, and real-world achievers who are making waves in the real estate world. We'll explore the best practices, share invaluable lessons learned, and equip you with tools you need to thrive in today's competitive market. Welcome to the lounge where leaders are made and success is earned. Come on in to the Real Estate Team Leader Lounge.
Hello and welcome to another episode in Leads and Leverage, the Team Leader Lounge. I'm so happy to have Luis Belmonte with me from San Francisco, California today. Thanks for being here, Louie.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Louie, people don't know this yet because we haven't told them, but you're a multiple-time author, real estate investor, developer, and just all-around great guy, it sounds like. So
let's leave the last one off, but all that other stuff is true.
Fair enough. Well, tell us a little bit about your background, your story, and what business looks like today.
Okay, well, I got into the real estate business quite by accident after I got out of Vietnam in 1967. I got an apartment with a friend of mine from high school and got a corporate job, and he was upside down in a little real estate rehab deal. He'd met some fool in a saloon who convinced him to invest in a deal, and the theory was they were going to buy this little building and fix it up and sell it, and his bar buddy was going to do the work, and my partner was going to spend his little inheritance from his grandfather buying the building. And it wasn't working out because not much work was going on. So I said, my job is boring and the pay sucks. So if you'll pay me $3 an hour, I'll strap on my tool belt and teach you how to do this, and we'll finish up the job. And I ended up buying out his partner, and we finished the deal and sold it and made a little money and did another one and then did another one. And the third one didn't work out so well because we got caught in a big interest rate crunch and we over remodeled it. So we barely made wages, but at least we lived through it. And at that point, I got married, and then my wife got pregnant. I realize that sounds very obsolete, but that's the way we used to do it in the 50s and 60s. So there was some pressure for regular income. So I went to the headhunters and ended up working for a New York-based development company that built and operated warehouses. So I spent 35 years building, buying, selling, leasing, rehabbing, managing, financing warehouse buildings all over the United States, Singapore, Mexico, Japan. I became one of the biggest developers of warehouse in the history of the world. Not that that's a grand accomplishment. It's not a very complicated product, but I'm one of the world's resident experts on 4 walls and a roof 4 feet off the ground. And in 2000, the company I worked for, which is now Prologis, I was one of the junior partners when the predecessor company went public. Decided they wanted to really ramp up the development program, and I was 64 years old, and being an international road warrior at that age is a little tough on the body. So we had a very happy and lucrative parting, and I went off into the sunset and founded a little development company with a friend of mine. And we don't do deals that are more than a 90-minute flight from San Francisco, so I don't have jet lag. And we do low-income housing and neighborhood retail, and we got one little industrial deal, and that's the whole history as fast as I can tell it.
Well, that's fascinating. First of all, to be an international road warrior, as somebody who traveled for work at one point in my career, I can't even imagine having to do it internationally all the time. So I tip my hat to you, sir.
The first time I went to Singapore, it's 24 hours door to door, 17 hours to Hong Kong, and then 5 hours to Singapore. And I just sat in the hotel and watched the Cartoon Channel for a day in order to figure out what day of the week it was and what continent I was in. It's mind-boggling. And the older you get, the tougher it is.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit, as I mentioned, you're a multi-time author. Tell me a little bit about, or tell me some of the books that you've written recently and that could have a good application for real estate agents.
So the first is Real Estate 101. And what I try and do there is introduce people to the field, kind of all aspects of it. So the first chapter is about buying a house and saying, if you don't read any more, the one real estate investment you're probably going to make is you're going to buy a house somewhere along the line. And this is a huge investment and you should take it seriously. And you need to find the appropriate broker. And here's how you underwrite brokers. And here's how you do your due diligence. And here's who you hire. And then I talk about the various kinds of real estate, multifamily, industrial, retail, office, institutional investment, leverage, that kind of thing, to just kind of give people an overview of the subject. The second book, and probably the best one, is Street Dog MBA. And what I tell people is if you have the horsepower and the money and the time, getting an MBA is a good thing, especially if you get it from a top school, or you get it from a second-tier school, but go to night school and emphasize bang for the buck. Don't spend too much money, learn what you can. But if you're in a top-tier school, you're going to make a lot of good contacts. And I was a guest lecturer at both the Haas Business School at Berkeley and for 20 years at Stanford. And so what I'm trying to do in the book is tell people who have an MBA things they wouldn't otherwise learn. So one of the things I did at Stanford, one of the kind of the ham and egg routines that I had with a professor, is to talk about the general disdain people have for salespeople and why that's foolish and why you need to learn about selling and understand what it's all about. So, what I do is tell stories about my business life and screw ups I've had or experiences I've had or hard knocks, and say, okay, here's what happened to me. Here's the scars I have. And here's the lesson I took out of this that you may be able to leave. You may be able to use. So, kind of the mantra is, some people learn by reading, some people learn by listening to others, but most guys especially have to go ahead and pee on the electric fence. If you don't feel like doing that, here's something that happened to me that you don't need to have happen to you if you read this story and remember it. So, that's kind of the whole idea. And then the next book is Street Dog Negotiator. And what I'm trying to do with that book is teach people the attitude of indifference. So you need to negotiate without fear. And the way you do that is you don't give a rat's ass about whether you make the deal or not. You walk into the room with a list in your head or on a piece of paper or what you need from the transaction, and then a list in descending order of what you'd like to have from the transaction. And if you get what you need and a little bit of what you like, if you get the cake and a little bit of frosting, shake hands and leave. If there is not a path to getting what you need, then just say, friends, this ain't going to work out. I'm sorry. And I don't mean to waste your time. Get up and walk out of the room and keep walking. And quite often somebody will come chasing you, but if they don't, they don't. But if you don't care, it don't count. And in the immortal words of Herb Cohn, you got to care, but not that much. And so that's what I'm trying to teach people. And then before you go in, assess your leverage. If you have very little leverage, be aware of that and take whatever you can get and slink out. If you've got a lot of leverage and people bluster and posture and all that stuff, just wait. If you've got enough leverage, the deal will come your way. So it's the same as selling. You got to do it without fear. So what I tell salespeople is you need to tithe yourself until you have enough set aside to live on, so that you can pick your clients and pick your situations. And if the situation is a bad one, just walk out. And if you're selling without fear, you can afford to tell the truth, and that shows. So if you're selling with fear in your eyes, then I don't believe anything you say. If you're selling fearlessly, then I can take you seriously, and we can do some business together. So that's what's going on there. The most recent book is Street Dog Manager. And the premise there is, if you're running an organization, you're not the master, you're the servant. And if you serve the organization correctly, then your rewards will follow. The respect, the ability to lead, the financial rewards will come from being a servant, not being the boss. But first things first. And if you think you're the boss, you're deluding yourself, because people are working around you, not for you. So that's kind of the summary of my author experience.
Well, I love some of the premises that you talked about, and I'll definitely need to check some of those out. You mentioned something about Real Estate 101 that I kind of want to go back to. You talk about how you teach people how to underwrite brokers.
Yes.
I've never heard anybody say that before. And so I'm curious to know a little bit more about what that looks like. But I also find it curious because statistically, most buyers only meet with one real estate agent before they decide who they're going to work with. And sellers typically don't meet with more than two on average.
So I used to lease space all around the United States. So I worked for a company that bought packages of buildings from other institutional investors, bought packages of buildings on behalf of pension funds and university endowments and people like the World Bank. And we had funds and all kinds of stuff, discretion in a box. And so, and I'm the running asset manager. So we're going to buy 15 buildings in Dallas. And I got to go to Dallas, and I got 23 vacancies in these 15 buildings. So I got to pick brokers to lease this vacancy up. And Dallas is a brand new market to me, say. So I go to town and I get a hotel room and start running interviews in the lobby. And of course, the grapevine being the grapevine, I get more cold calls and letters under my door than you can jump over. So I'm just talking to brokers all day. And so, first thing I ask them is, what's the last 5 deals you did? And I write that down. And then we talk about what's going on, and they give me their pitch and, their PowerPoint and all that crap. And then I say, well, if I don't hire you, who should I hire? And gradually 4 or 5 names will emerge. So say south of DFW, there's an industrial market of about 40 million feet. And there's, 4 or 5 people are doing all the deals there. And over time, those names emerge. Then I got the list in my hand and I go drive the market and I look at the last 5 deals each of those people did. And I see if they look like the deal that I got to do. And so what I'm trying to do is pick the 10%. So 10% of the people in the market are doing 90% of the deals. I need to pick the 10%. And 10%, it turns out to be 4 or 5 people. And if I got a big enough market, I'm giving a listing to all of them. And then I'm telling them, you guys got to have breakfast with each other and exchange leads, because I know that 99 chances out of 100, the next deal is coming from one of those people. So I got to pick the producers in the sub-market I'm in. So if I'm buying a house, I got to drive the neighborhood, see who's got the signs up, go on the internet, see who's got all the listings in that neighborhood, who's doing all the deals right in the block I'm in. And there's going to be 2 or 3 people doing all the deals. So those are the 2 or 3 you talk to.
Fascinating. So as an agent, how do I get myself on the list to be in consideration as people are underwriting me? Is it just about my volume?
Well, I have, interestingly enough, given the first major listing to 4 or 5 of the biggest producers in the world in the business I'm in, because I have over the years trained myself to spot sales talent early on. And I always want to be able to give what will be tomorrow's giant producer one of their first listings, because that's what they remember. And what I'm looking for is people who are able to establish connection, because selling is all about emotional communication, at which I have no skill at all. So I want to see people who are able to connect with another human being emotionally, and figure out what their hot buttons are, what their selling and what their buying signals are. So if they're talking to me, what I'm looking for is ideas, because I'm a developer, and development is all about creativity. I got to envision something that isn't there. I got to come up with a better idea. So, if I'm a lender, I'm interested in comps and stats. If I'm a developer, I'm interested in ideas. Do you catch that? And I'm interested in the cold, hard facts. I don't want any fluff at all. I want to know what the worst possible situation is. I want to know about the worst defect of the property. I want to know about the worst action of the prospective tenant. What a slob they are, or what a deadbeat they are, because I might decide to take them anyway, but I want to go in with my eyes open. So I want the cold, hard facts of life. So if you're able to perceive that and give that to me, then we establish trust. And establishing trust is what selling is all about, which is why I say, if you're a salesperson, you have to sell fearlessly, because otherwise you can't establish trust. You got bullshit out ahead of you coming at me, and I can see it coming. So that's aside from volume, you have to show me that you are a natural born salesperson, because that you're born, not made. Nobody can make themselves into a salesman. You either can communicate emotionally or you can't. You can get better at it if you study psychology, if you take sales training. I think psychology is even more important than sales training, is understanding that other people are different than you and coming at them inside their wheelhouse, not inside yours. And one of the greatest peddlers I ever met said the key is focusing the searchlight of attention on the client, acting as if they're the most important thing in the world and their concerns are the most important thing in the world. So I'll give you an example. I had a big listing one time in Santa Clara County, a big R&D park that I built. And for reasons that are too complicated to explain, I have the best land basis in town. So my rent could be cheaper than anybody else's, and I'd still make good money. So one of my favorite brokers came to me, and this is a guy with a 6th grade education from a town with dirt streets in Mississippi, not a terribly sophisticated human being. And he said, "I want your listing." And I said, "Jim, I don't need a lister. I got good buildings in a great location and a great basis. I can just leave it open." He said, "Louie, you don't know squat about the R&D business. You're a warehouse guy. You don't know diddle about this business, and you got more competition than you even know about. You need my help." And I said, "Fine, Jim, I am open to that possibility." And he said, "I'm going to give you a tour." So I took my 2 project managers down to the site, and I to meet him, and he's going to tour us around. He showed up in the most garish lavender limousine that you have ever seen in your life, knowing that I am a tacky human being. I mean, this thing was gaudy beyond belief. And I'm laughing my ass off. So we all jump in this limo. He takes me around and shows me a dozen other deals under construction by people who are real studs in the R&D business. And we get to the end of it, and he said, "Are you now convinced that you need my help?" And I said, "Yes, Jim, I am. You can have the listing." Because he found the hot button. And the hot button was gaudy, number one, and number two, competitive situation and my lack of knowledge about that particular submarket. So that's what selling is all about.
Yeah, I think there's a great way that residential real estate agents can take that similar story in just sharing how proficiently they understand a particular neighborhood or area. And I think to your point, it's really important for agents to be brutally honest with They're consumers. I tell people all the time, I'm more likely to talk you out of buying this house than I am to talk you into it, because I want to point out all the things that are wrong with it. Because if you see them up front and you still like it and want to buy it, then I know that, I've done my job correctly, right? And it builds trust.
The best way to sell something is to tell somebody how terrible it is, so when they look at it, it's not as bad as they have in their head. And the best way to sell a house, in my view, is to watch the wife. If she's arranging furniture in her mind, you got a sale. And I have a friend who sells high-end houses, and I mean high-end. He just sold one for $22 million, and he's got a listing for $29 million. That's high-end.
Wow.
And he and his lady are the world's best stagers, and they understand the taste of their constituent buyers. And you walk into a house that they have staged, and it's absolutely appealing to the class of people they're trying to sell to. And a friend of mine passed away recently, and she had, by their standards, a fairly modest house that I thought was worth maybe $3 million. It had all kinds of problems, didn't have a garage, too close to a commercial street, kind of constricted lot, all that. They finished staging it, and it was a nice house with nice decor, but dated. And they arranged the floor plan, changed all, and they rent art from big time galleries, or they get the galleries to hang the stuff there as an ad. And they sold the house for almost $1 million more than I thought it was worth. And given that her heirs were not wealthy people, that money made a whole lot of difference to them. In one case, real financial help. And they put $1 million in people's pocket that wouldn't have been there otherwise, because of their talent for appropriate staging to come into the wheelhouse of the person that was going to buy the house. So if I'm selling my house and someone shows me that kind of staging, and one of the things they do, they typically charge like $100,000 to stage a house. And if people don't want to spend the $100,000, they say, fine, we'll spend our own money, but we get 50% of everything we make above the listing price, in addition to get our $100,000 back. And magically enough, people change their minds and decide, well, they'll spring for the staging. So the question is, what's adding value? So if you can point out the defects of a house to somebody, and they can use that as a bargaining chip, or you recommend the right termite guy or the right structural guy, I mean, you can change the whole course of a negotiation with your expertise. And you can also save people a whole lot of trouble if you point out, you're in an earthquake zone and you're going to need to do this to upgrade, or you're in a flood zone and you damn sure better buy flood insurance if you're going to buy this house, or prop it up 4 feet or whatever. You're performing a service. So what I'm saying in Real Estate 101 is, you hire a broker to get expertise. And if you don't do that, and you make an investment of several $100,000 without expertise, you're a fool.
Well, you heard it here, folks. I didn't say it, though. But I do love that. Talk to me a little bit about negotiating without fear, because I love that. And I actually think that indifference is so critical for every real estate agent. Oftentimes, before they're even at the negotiating table, I think that indifference needs to show up as you start to consult buyers and sellers. Because if you can't be indifferent to the outcome of whether or not they're going to work with you, I feel like they can smell that, they can see that, and a lot of times intuitively it turns people off. So
let's start with this. If you're selling, I say you should have a pipeline. You ought to have 3 or 4 deals that are on track to close. You ought to have 3 or 4 deals that are serious, and you ought to have 3 or 4 deals that you've rolled over and are starting the process. So that ought to be your pipeline to make a living. So anybody who's in the selling business has got 30 or 40 things they're working on. And I say, take a piece of paper or your computer or whatever, write them all down and underwrite them. What's the chances of closing? 90, 10, 10, 90, 50, 50, and then rearrange them in the order that you think they might actually happen. And most people have a pretty good idea of whether something's going to happen or not. But most peddlers work real hard on big deals that have very little chance of closing because they're mesmerized by the number. Everybody in your business can multiply by 5% or 6% or whatever's going on. I mean, you take any number in the world, they can come up with 5% of it in a nanosecond. So you have a tendency to work on big deals that aren't going to make. But anyway, write them all down, and then fold a piece of paper in half, rip it in half, and throw the bottom half away. Just quit working on deals that ain't going to work, or have a low odds of working. And some of them might someday by some accident work, but you will have wasted more time than you should have trying to get there. And you should be working on deals that work. So as a developer, what I want to know is, are the stars aligned? Can I get the dirt at the right price? Is there a lender or equity source out there that I can get the money from? Can I get the permit? Can I get the sewer connection? And if all of those things are feasible, then I go forward. If one of them isn't feasible, get the hell out. Because if I can't get a sewer connection or I can't get a septic system in, I can't do the deal. So the rest of it doesn't make any difference. If the loan market isn't having it right now, so if I'm going to buy an office building today, I can't depend on getting a loan. Nobody's lending on office space. So can I do an all equity deal? If I can, and I recently bought a building all equity. If I can do an all equity deal, fine. If not, you ain't buying any office buildings right now, no matter how good the deal is. So are the stars aligned? So the question is, are deals going to close? Then the second thing is, what's the risk factor here? If the prospective client is a chiseler or a looky-loo or whatever word you have for someone who's not really going to do a deal, don't waste your time. Just don't do it. And so if you're not desperate for the money, and if you're realistic and you say this deal ain't going to make, forget it. Or if you're dealing with a chiseler or someone who's dishonest, you may want to do that, but go in with your eyes open. I call that doing a drug deal. I bring the drugs, you bring the money. I bring a counterfeit expert. They bring a chemist. We're both armed. We do a simultaneous transaction. We back off and we take a different route going home. I've done deals like that. I've done deals with some very nasty people, but there's no trust whatever. I got to have things in my hand. And in those situations, I got to have escrow instructions that I have 100% control of. And I have to have penalty clauses that make it really painful for the other team to screw me. And so you can go ahead and screw me, but you're really going to have to pay me to do that. So when my partner and I used to build drugstores for Walgreens, and as soon as the slab's poured, we put it on the market. We get all kinds of 1031 buyers, and their brokers say, well, you tie up 5 or 6 deals in the first 45 days or whatever it is, and then we'll spend the next 45 days figuring out which one to close on. Well, when they come around to see us, we say, okay, you put up 5% of the purchase price. You got 30 days to look. And after 30 days, we take the 5% of the purchase price, not non-refundable in the escrow account, in my hand. And the only caveat is you get the money back from us if we don't deliver the deed. Other than that, we keep it. And you can pick any of those other deals that you tied up, and that's fine with us, but we've charged you 5% for tying our property up. And screaming and hollering, you can't do that, fine, don't care. That's our deal. And magically enough, people who wanted a Walgreens, when Walgreens was a really hot investment, would put the money up. And magically enough, they'd end up closing our deal because everybody wants to chase the sunk money. So you have to, kind of think through the implications of that. But if you're selling without fear, then you can go into those situations and keep going forward and not worry about it. And if it doesn't make, it doesn't make. You're not going to make every deal.
Yeah. I love that. And I'm going to ask a question out of my ignorance because I heard you say a term that I didn't understand. You said if you can do an all equity deal because banks aren't loaning on office space.
Yeah.
Can you educate me on what you mean by an all equity deal?
No loan.
Okay.
That's the way pension funds typically buy is, you just all cash. So
Got it.
in our case, we bought this deal, and, my partners and I put up, significant amount of the purchase price, and we got a few investors that we deal with on an occasional basis, and we called them up, said, here's the deal we got, the price per pound is good. Are you interested? You want to put up couple of $100,000 in this deal, and we go to people for whom that investment is not exactly a rounding error, but it's not the end of the world if it doesn't work. And so, 2 or 3 people put money in with us, and we just bought the deal. There's no loan on it. And and if we, at some point, if we lease the building and the loan market changes, we'll go out and put some financing on it, give people their equity back, on a tax-free basis, and everybody's pig happy.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Yeah. I wasn't sure how to interpret that but thank you. That clears it up.
All questions are good questions.
Right. Well, the only bad question is one you don't ask.
Yes,
right?
Precisely.
Because you're just dumber.
Yeah.
You didn't learn something.
One of the greatest negotiating techniques I know is to say, I have no idea what you're talking about. You are way over my head. Please help me understand this. And one of my former partners, and this goes way back, but when in my era, when we were in grammar school, you learned to read with a series of books about Dick and Jane. And there was Dick and Jane and their dog Spot, see Spot run. And so he would stop meetings. And he would stop meetings in glass-walled conference rooms high above Wall Street and say, hey, you got to do Dick and Jane with me here. I don't understand where Spot went. Please help me out. And in front of $1,000 an hour lawyers, and it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I learned from him. Just say, I have no idea what you're talking about. Help me here. Help me.
Yeah. So I'm curious, did he really not know what they were talking about? Or
sometimes he didn't, sometimes he did. But it was a way to get a hesitation in the conversation, to digest stuff, time to think about. So here's another example of, kind of how that works. During the 90s, when the development business was in the toilet, I developed a practice of being an expert witness, because the commercial real estate market was in the toilet and everybody was suing everybody. And so, I worked on lawsuits, and mostly what you do as an expert witness is give depositions. And so you go into the room, and the opposing lawyer asks you a question, and your lawyer will object. And there's usually a whole lot of dialogue. And what's going on with the objection is, number one, the lawyer defending you is telling you, hesitate before you respond, think through your answer, don't babble on, and here's the answer I want you to give. Buried somewhere in all the back and forth between the two lawyers is the answer they're looking for. So what that kind of does in a negotiation is slow it down, give you time to think through what's going on, analyze where the other team is coming from, and hopefully learn something. And, a whole lot of people will tell you stuff they wouldn't otherwise tell you if you'll just ask them.
Yeah, I love that. And that is so true. A lot of people will tell you something if you just ask them. But you do need to ask the right way.
Yes.
Right. What would you, we're running out of time, so I'm going to try to hurry up. But what's your favorite way to ask any kind of question?
Please help me.
I love that. And then just whatever it is that you're trying to find out or understand. Yeah. I love that. It does. I think it removes that offensive, any kind of offense that the question might bring by just saying, I need help. I love that. What a great tip. Well, Louie, thank you so much. We're running up on time, and I want to be respectful of yours. So what if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, they had questions about something that you said, what's the best way for somebody to get a hold of you?
Email. I don't do TikTok or Instagram or any of the, I'm old. lbelmonte@7hp.com.
Awesome.
Happy to answer questions. And
awesome.
Order up a book if you want more thoughts. Amazon, Luis, Luis, Belmonte, Belmonte. Real Estate 101, Street Dog MBA, Street Dog Negotiator, Street Dog Manager. They're on Kindle, they're on paperback, they're cheap, and they're short and quick. They got stories, hopefully a few giggles. And if you don't like what you read, leave a nasty review.
All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for being here, Louie. And thank you to everyone that tuned in for this episode of Leads and Leverage. We'll see you next time.
Thanks a lot.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Leads and Leverage. I hope you found our conversation insightful and actionable. Remember, success in real estate is not just about transactions. It's about the relationships you build, the teams you lead, and the impact you make in the lives of others. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay connected with our community of real estate leaders and entrepreneurs, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us bring you more valuable content and guests. Don't forget to visit our website, gpghome.com/leads and leverage for additional resources, show notes, and exclusive updates. You can also follow me on Instagram at real_Tyler Gibson to join the conversation and connect with like-minded individuals. See you next week.